Yeah, 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 yeah. La.
Welcome back to Bottle Rocket. I'm your host Elena, here with Maven Solon. Joining us are Alan Kreda and legendary Sam Rosen will be joining us shortly as well. How are you guys? Welcome.
Good, we're good.
I'm excited that you were on the ice for a championship game. So tell us, what was it like?
Thank you. Oh my God, it was an incredible experience. It exceeded my expectations. I went to the morning skates twice and then covered 3 games and was there for celebration on ice. It was surreal. I'm still daydreaming.
What about the kid on the other team, Rod Brindamore's son? Did he play?
He did. He played, yeah.
Is he any
And-
good?
Yeah, he was very good, very competitive. The whole series was very, very close. The Marlies lost game 4. Everybody was kind of hoping they would close it out with a sweep, but it didn't happen, so it went to game 5, and it was a close game as well.
Did they play in Chicago at all?
Yes, they started the series in Chicago. The first 2 games were there, and then they came back to Toronto for the last 3 games.
Who are the 2 best prospects for the Leafs for the next season to make?
Easton Cowan is definitely going to be an NHLer, and I think he's going to be a really good one. I'm also hoping for Artur Akhtiamov, the Russian goalie. Interestingly enough, the Leafs just traded Wall. I know they got the goalie from the Philadelphia Flyers, but I think Artur is going to be the next goalie. He's been very good, and he was named the MVP of the playoffs as well.
Who was the other guy you mentioned that you're so confident that he's going to make the Leafs?
Easton Cowan?
Yeah. What makes you
Yes.
think he's good enough?
He's very competitive, extremely talented. He changes the game, generates scoring chances, and he's incredible on the back check. He already played with the Leafs, so the team knows him. And he's got heart, you can really see it. He's very tough on himself when something doesn't go his way. He gets frustrated with himself, but that shows he takes accountability. What also impressed me was how mature he is, He's great in interviews, very media savvy, and carries himself really well. For someone who is only 20, he's very composed. I think he's going to be a great NHL player in the next few years.
They come from juniors or college?
Yeah, juniors. He won an OHL championship with them twice.
Okay.
Nice.
I hope for your sake. We need your team needs it, believe me. Good could be good thing. I'm glad.
And there he is.
Hey,
Hello.
There he
Hi,
is.
Sam. There he
alive.
is.
There he is.
I'm
Nice.
alive.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Stanley, you
Sam?
look beautiful.
Sam, I'm not gonna fool around. We're just talking about books. Are you working on your book now?
Very slowly, incrementally.
And you're happy that way, right?
I don't know. I have mixed emotions. It's like the family wants me to do it and, get with it. And it's like, I don't know. I haven't found myself yet. This has been a very transitional year, transitioning from a person, as you know, that is going and doing and a lot going on. And this has been one of those, I wish I had something to do today. But
What
we'll get there. I think I'll get there.
do you have a publisher?
I'm leaving Alan to work on that, and he thinks we do, and hopefully that'll
Okay.
work out. We have a conference call later next week, and hopefully all will work out, and we'll go full guns ahead.
Okay, I'll tell you where you are now. You are in this. It's the start of training camp. You're in start of training camp. Then, when he'll get you a publisher. No question about it. Once you get a publisher, Sam, it's no more kidding around. You're gonna have an editor. and you're going to have what they call a deadline. It's like at the end of the three periods, so you're going to have a deadline, and you don't want to get. I know you don't want anybody to get pissed off with you. You don't want to piss off your editor, but you have Matt Rempe. He's Crater is your Matt Rempe, so he'll take the crap. He'll be fighting for it. This is going to be a wonderful thing, and you're in a great position now. You're going to get the publisher. There's got to be a bunch wanting to do the thing, and once you got the contract, it's like the start of the season.
Well,
And Crater's name for after you get started, his name is going to be Brindamore.
if his name is Brindamore, I'll be very happy because I'm a big Rod Brindamore fan. He's a good man and has been very good to me for a long, long time.
Okay. So I think I've made you happier than you were 5 minutes ago.
I think that's what you've said is reassuring. That
I wanted to,
once I get on this path, it'll all work out.
I'm going to tell you the joke that I told the other day, just because I feel like, okay? So this guy goes to a shrink, right? And the shrink is studying him for 2 months, and the 2 months are up, and the guy turns to the shrink. He says, "So what do you have to tell me?" The shrink says, "You're crazy." The guy says, "Well, then give me your second opinion." He says, "You're also ugly." I'll let Alan and Solon.
Did you ever write a book of jokes, of Stan's favorite jokes?
No, because I'd rather tell them. But I do, between you and me, I send jokes to certain hockey people, and I send jokes to my friends all the time. But
Nice.
It's not the same as when you tell, because when you tell to somebody, it's show business. You want to, if you're a stand-up, you're a stand-up. You want to get a reaction.
Well,
So
I know that for many, many meetings and for years, we started our production meetings with your jokes. And then I thought the highlight was always when John Tortorella, the man of many personalities, would come down the hall and say, "You got one for me today?" And you would say, "All right." And you'd pull one out of your hat.
I always followed your taped interview with Torts, and he was a no kidding around audience. When he didn't like my joke, he would say, "Stan, you're crazy," and he'd walk away. So he was right half the time. What do you think? Are you in touch with him at all?
I texted him when he got to the Stanley Cup final. I was surprised when he got the job. Though George McPhee, I had seen George at one of the Rangers centennial events, and George had told me at the time that he didn't like the way his team was playing. And at the time, they were competing for first place in the Pacific Division, but he wasn't happy with the way they were playing. And when they made the coaching change, it was shocking. Stan, I mean, a coaching change that late in the season. But then Torts made it work, and he got to the Stanley Cup final, and I texted him congratulating him on a job well done, and he texted back. He thanked me, and it's been an interesting go around with Torts. When he was amongst the opposition, he couldn't have been nicer to me, to JD, to Joe Micheletti. He gave us time. We'd go in the room. We'd talk families. We'd talk animals. We'd talk kids. And then as the Rangers coach, it's like he wouldn't talk to me at all. We had arguments in the hall. He yelled at me one time, "You like Tom Rennie better than me." It's like, hey, Torts, I love every Rangers coach. But it's always, always been a very strange man, but I've always praised him. Look, an hour after the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup in 2004, I was sitting in his office with his brother in the Stanley Cup. Then he comes to New York, and it's like, you want information from me? What are you doing in the hallway over there? So it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
No question. No question. Sam?
He would make a great psychological study.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know what the shrink said. You're also ugly. Sam, who's your favorite moment apart from the cup win and in all the years? Our moments, obviously there are many.
Oh, just so many. I would say my first thought is always not so many a singular moment, but the great players that came through New York and played for the New York Rangers, and players like Marcel Dion, who you go back and you realize there's this little guy with the round face and the roly-poly body, and was one of the greatest players and a great personality. And we had Guy Lafleur come to the Rangers, and Wayne Gretzky come to the Rangers, and Brian Leetch grow up. I remember interviewing an 18-year-old Brian Leetch in the balcony at Boston Garden before a Rangers Bruins game, and the Rangers had drafted Brian, and he was going to be one of the saviors, and certainly he was a major piece of the foundation. People like that, Wayne Gretzky coming to the Rangers and being able to sit next to him on a plane, and he'd be across the aisle from me, and if the plane shook, he got up and he went into the cockpit and sat with the pilot for half an hour. I mean, things like Mark Messier coming to the Rangers and becoming bigger than life. Rod Gilbert walking down the streets on 3rd Avenue across the street from McMullen's restaurant, and people are yelling, "Rod, Rod," and he's waving like he's the mayor of New York City. Those are the things that I'll always carry with me and always remember, these great players, and on and on. And I know we could go on for a long time with all the players and stars and just great people to know and find out and talk to and be around. And for me, as a lifelong sports fan, I was in my glory. I mean, I'm hanging out with all these great superstar players. It couldn't have been better.
What was the most memorable interview from all of them?
Oh, wow. Most memorable interview. I think that's hard to point out. When I first started in Madison Square Garden, I was doing basketball, and got to meet the Knicks of the '80s, Patrick Ewing. I interviewed Michael Jordan when he was a rookie, but I guess the one thing that sticks out immediately is I'll think about Mark Messier being interviewed before Game 6 of the Rangers Devils series in 1994, and this huge throng of reporters surrounding him and asking him what he thought would happen. And of course, he said, "We're going to win." And that became the guarantee. I mean, the huge headline. And to back it all up, to make it bigger than life, he scores a hat trick and the Rangers win the game. And, to me, Mark was always a very approachable person. I'll tell you, one of the guys that I always loved was Henrik Lundqvist, because he was the antithesis of what I grew up uh, looking at goalies. Goalies on game day, oh, can't go near a goalie. Don't. If you said a word to the goalie, it was like, oh, you jinxed them. That's it. We're finished tonight. Henrik Lundqvist was totally the opposite. Happy to see you. What you ask him a question, thoughts about the game. Just a very warm, approachable person, great athlete, intelligent, and was always a pleasure to speak with. And to this day, you see him in the hallway at the Garden, and he's got a huge smile on his face, and just great to be around. So he was the easiest. Mark Messier, I admired because he was the captain of the team and always stood up in the locker room in front of reporters, win or lose, to talk about what happened in the game.
Sam, I have to say that the most underrated aspect of your professional career, which I think is admired as much as anything, is that you are excellently versatile. You did football. You did all these other sports expertly. Which was the most difficult?
Women's field hockey. In the early days of ESPN, when they went on the air in 1979, September of 1979, they were looking for programming, and they would put on anything. I did table tennis for them, and I never got paid for it because there was an outside independent contractor. But anyway, I would say they called me up and they asked me to do women's field hockey. What do I know about women's field hockey? But you find a coach, and the coach explains the game, and you let the coach be the expert and identify the players and go, wow, what a great shot, So, women, those early days of ESPN, I did Australian rules football in the studio, and the guy would he'd come there, he'd score a goal or whatever it was, and again, it was one of those situations where if you didn't know the sport, you found an expert and you let the expert be the expert. And for me, it was, again, identification, let people know what the score was, who was on the field and who was playing. And that was my role in sports that I didn't know. But those were interesting days with ESPN using whatever they could for programming.
How do you contrast your football work with your hockey work? Which
Football
was
was wonderful because, Stan, football was once a week, and no matter what game you had, and there were times when I was doing, maybe the number 3, number 4 game, but sometimes the best games turned out to be where we were the number 2 late game. The number 1 late game, second game of the football doubleheader on Sunday would be the featured game, and 80% of the nation would get that game. And then if it was a blowout, they'd go to the backup game, and that was us. So we had the whole country watching our game. But football was so important, is so important in America, Stan. It's every Sunday, and no matter what game you're doing, that audience in those 2 cities and the surrounding cities, that was their big game. They didn't care about, what if Dallas was playing the Giants. If you were, whatever game you were doing, that's the game that was most important to them, and you had to treat it that way, and I made sure to always do that. But football, the realization of football was that it was that one game in a week, and it was highly, highly important.
Was there a moment in your career when you were doing an interview and it was hard to keep your emotions in check because you were so excited, nervous, or overwhelmed?
I can't say that at all because I had the great good fortune not only of doing the Rangers Stanley Cup in 1994, which was a huge, huge moment in hockey and for the Rangers. I mean, think about it. They've won one Stanley Cup in 86 years. Now, that now has all, in a way has been matched by the New York Knicks winning for the first time in 53 years. For the Rangers, it was the first time in 54 years. That was a huge moment in New York sports, in hockey, and I think that myself and John Davidson and our whole broadcast team at Madison Square Garden didn't let it overwhelm them. I think we were able to handle it, understand the importance of it, but yet stay within ourselves. And I just remember certain moments, especially when the game ended, Game 7, and the Rangers had won the cup. And I mean, I looked at Big John Davidson, all 6'5" and 260 pounds or whatever he was, and here was this huge man with tears in his eyes, and we had our arms around each other because he had Ranger blue on his heart. But those are moments. I always try to keep things in perspective, and I think my good fortune in working for a couple of companies on the radio broadcast side for United Press Internationals and national news organization, and we were the audio network servicing radio stations around the country, and I was able to do all kinds of big sports, covered the Kentucky Derby. Football was huge. College football was big. We were there for all national sports, so it was an understanding that it was a vast audience you were trying to inform and trying to appeal to. I covered the Lake Placid Olympics. I mean, there's no greater sporting event than 1980. To me, the event hockey at the 1980 Olympics changed the sport. It lifted hockey in America and made the National Hockey League a better league and the game of hockey a more important sport. So being able to cover those events and being around those sporting events made me appreciate how big they were, how important they were, and how best to approach those sports.
Looking back now, did you appreciate how historic those moments were while you were covering them? Or is that something you only realize with time?
I think certain events, as I mentioned, the national events where you're covering the Olympics, that's a worldwide event. It doesn't get any bigger than that. I mean, I was in Montreal in 1976 for the Montreal Olympics, and Bruce Jenner was the decathlon champion, and the U.S. basketball team dominated, and the U.S. boxing team dominated. We had at least 4 champions come out of the Summer Olympics in Montreal in '76. So covering that event, covering the Olympics in 1980, and as I mentioned, other sports, covering U.S. Open golf tournament, U.S. Open tennis. So these were major events. You understood that they had traditionally been major events. Now, a singular incident, a singular game, anything can happen in those moments where, when something happens that becomes a memorable moment. I was at the World Series when Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs in a game. I mean, those are spectacular moments, but I would say the games themselves being important, the importance of the game, I think we understood going into that.
And what in the vast history of your career, which is decades and decades of New York sports, national sports, what would you hope readers would come away with in a memoir? Like, what's your goal or thought for sharing this in one coalesced place?
For me, I think it would be to relate to the average that I was the average fan. I was the average person being able to watch these events. The good fortune that I had, but the appreciation of the sports and the especially the athletes. And we've talked about this, Alan, you and I. I mean, every these athletes that I was fortunate enough to cover were at the height of their profession. In the National Hockey League, you've reached the top of your profession. How did they get there? How did an 18-year-old kid from Slovenia become a Hall of Fame player? How did that happen? And I was able to be around them and understand them and learn from them and find out their stories. And I think I'd like fans to understand that I was lucky, I was fortunate how I got there, but also, the moments that I could share with the fans are very important to me.
Now, Sam, I have a question as well for you. Out of you just went through a list of a lot of memories that you have, but if you were able to go back to your first day on the job again, what would you tell yourself?
Well, it depends what I would consider first day on the job. Um, I was still in college and working at WINS radio and tearing news copy off the wires and helping put together sportscast for reporters and going out, covering stories and taking in police reports. So that was the foundation, talking to engineers, how they edited tape, going out with the reporters at WINS on election night and interviewing people about the election, interviewing winners, losers. And I remember one of the first jobs, the forerunner to one of the first jobs I got was doing a phone interview with Stuart McKinney, who was he's no longer with us, but was elected to Congress in Connecticut. And I was able to interview him on the phone for a station that in Bridgeport, Connecticut, that I was trying to get a job from, and did a nice interview. He won the election. I asked him, I don't know, a dozen questions, and afterwards the news director liked it so much that I got the job at WNAB radio. So those are the starts, the little things, working stats. I was a statistician for the New York Knicks radio network in 1970. Jim Gordon, who was my mentor, who I met at WINS radio when I was working while I was in college. Jim Gordon was doing play-by-play to small stations outside of New York. Marv Albert was doing the Knicks locally in New York, and Jim hired me to be his statistician. And at halftime and at the end of the game, he'd push the microphone in front of me and say, "They're your stats. You tell them on the air." And that's part of the job. That's part of how it started.
Now, if you could go back to that, or for young kids that are looking to do what you did, what would you tell them? What is one piece of advice that you'd give to those kids?
Just learn as much as you can. Learn from people who are doing the job that you ultimately would like to have, and listen, ask questions, but most of all, be open to learning. And you mentioned versatile before, Stan did, and that was, I think, one of my strongest points was when the job came along, I was able to say yes. And we talked about the early days at ESPN, and the executive producer was Scotty Connell, who had been at NBC for a long, long time. He helped put ESPN on the air, and they would call me to And finally, he said to me, Sam, is there any sport you can't do? And I said to Scotty, if I can't, I'll find out how to do it and we'll do it right.
Sam, I don't know how much more time you have, but I have a girlfriend who I introduced her to hockey at the start of the playoffs. She'd never seen a hockey game. She's baskets and football. And I said, we've been together very close. And she said, I'd like to see what you're all excited about. So I said, well, put on the games and see. And after the first game, she was very unhappy. And I said, why? She said, well, I can't understand the game. I can't see the puck. I can't follow the puck. And eventually we got to the Stanley Cup final. But the one thing she said, and of course she didn't know I was going to be interviewing you, she said, I can't understand how these play-by-play guys can know all these things and can talk so fast and know. So, Sam, what should I tell her? What's the answer? How are you able to do this that so many people are amazed?
Well, I would say practice, but also be selective in what is important. In hockey, what's important are scoring chances. What's going on, the tap dancing in center ice and back and forth, and this one misses a pass. Okay, that's when you can get your stories in. But when it comes to a scoring chance, as soon as the team enters the offensive zone, be on the play. Just be there. And for me, and I touched on it before, and I would tell this to any young aspiring broadcaster: identify who's on the ice, identify who people are watching. So all of a sudden, who scored that goal? No. That identify. He's on. Gilbert's here. Rattel is there. Whoever it is, identify the people on the ice, and then in your own mind be knowledgeable in the sport enough so you can discern what's important and what isn't. A little play off to the side may not be important. Might be important. A hit, a turnover, that's important. So the ability, having the knowledge and the understanding of the game is one thing. And then I'll go back to your friend, and I'm sure you've done this with her, is make sure she understands the rules of the game. That's it.
That's right. Thank you. I will relate.
We're gonna wrap up. It's a tradition of ours that Maeve tells us a joke at the end of the show. Do you have one for us?
Of course. Sam, you're a New York guy. You're a Brooklyn guy like me. And Sam, I just want to say before I tell the joke that the two things that have always struck me about you is that, one, your competency, the quintessential professional, and also, as we say in Yiddish, you are a mensch above all.
Thank you, Stanley. That's a high compliment.
That's why you have always been lovable. Competence and a great guy. Now, you ready for the gag?
Absolutely.
The New York gag. This guy is walking along Fifth Avenue in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and on his right hand he has a live penguin with him, and on his left hand he has a live penguin in him, and the cop goes over to the guy and he says, man, you can't do that. He said, what do you mean? He said, you can't be here walking with penguins. He says, I can give you a ticket. The guy says, well, what should I do? The cop says, take those two penguins to the Bronx Zoo now, or you're going to get a summons. It costs you $25. Get them to the Bronx Zoo. So the guy hails a cab, and he jumps in the cab, and he takes the penguins to the Bronx Zoo. Next day, the cop's walking the beat in front of St. Patrick's. The car stops for a red light at 50th and 5th, and the cop looks and sees in the car, there's a guy from yesterday. Now he's driving the car in the back seat of the two penguins sitting in the back seat, except now the penguins are wearing sunglasses. So the cop goes over to the guy. He says, "What the hell's the matter with you? I thought I told you to take those penguins to the Bronx Zoo." He says, "I did, and they loved it. Now we're going to Coney Island." Good to
Thank
see
you
you,
so
buddy.
much.
Alan, Sam, thank you so much for joining us on Bottle Rocket. It's been a pleasure having you with us today. To everyone watching, listening, please subscribe, like, and follow us on social media. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.